presented by Seat77.com. As always, Dave Dabbah is coming to you live from the Super Plus Seat 77 broadcast studio in the heart of Silicon Valley. Now, Dave Dabbah.
North America, good afternoon. I am Dave Dabbah, and this is the Dave Dabbah Big Show for a Friday. Oh boy, have we got a huge show for you today. Here's what we have for you today. Complete coverage, wall-to-wall coverage of the NBA draft. We've got Serge Ibaka being traded to the Orlando Magic. I will tell you why the Boston Celtics had the worst draft of the night. We've got DeMarcus Cousins with the finest tweet in the history of tweets. We've got the National Football League deciding to finally investigate that Al Jazeera PED report. We've got our top 5 cities who are living in sports misery. Plus, Bill Simmons debuts his new HBO show, and Ben Affleck does his best attempt to completely derail the night. And finally, I will get political as Donald Trump decides to insult yet another continent as he shows up in Scotland and discusses Brexit, which is quickly crashing the world's economies, including our own. All of that and more on today's Super Big Show. Okay, North America, info at seat77.com. I want to hear from you. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, the SoundCloud, Spreaker, and of course, we're on YouTube, and our big iTunes channel is blowing up, so thank you for all of your support there.
And now, North America, it's time for exclusive coverage of the National Basketball Association, the league that Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, and Air Jordan saved for Shaq, Kobe, and LeBron James. Presented by Seat77.com. And now, back to the Dave Dabbah Big Show.
Okay, North America, super excited about today's Big Show. Listen, if you haven't had a chance, download the Big Seat 77 Sports app. It is wall-to-wall coverage from around the world of sports. We even cover soccer in the app. So there you go. All right, listen, I am so fired up on a Friday. It's going to be a fantastic weekend. I'm so glad that the NBA decided to hold its draft. The way they do business in the National Basketball Association is fantastic. We just crowned a new champion. We decide to have a parade. And the next day, we have a draft officially opening up the next season. Just absolutely brilliant move by how the NBA operates its operations. Okay, so to the National Basketball Association draft we go. And of course, we all know who went number 1 in the draft this year. And it wasn't a surprise at all to anybody that Ben Simmons ended up going to Philadelphia. Now, when you look at Ben Simmons and you look at his game, and everybody always tries to make comparisons to, players, and, they're like, well, he's got Magic Johnson type qualities, and he does some LeBron James-esque things. Look, I think Ben Simmons, you don't want to put too much pressure on the kid out of the gate, but I got to tell you, for somebody at least on the court, a lot of potential. He is going to make everybody on the court better. Now the number one word that players and people in the media always look for is leadership. And if you're going to be Magic Johnson, or you're going to be Michael Jordan, or you're going to be LeBron James, or you're going to be Kobe Bryant, if you're going to be any of those guys, you have to be a strong leader. And that's what will allow you to bring other players onto the team that want to play with you. So that is something that I think a lot of people still have a question about. Look, the kid's not even 20 yet. So let's give him some time and let's see what happens. But at least from a talent perspective, from a player that can change a franchise, from a player that has potential franchise player implications, a fantastic pick by your Philadelphia 76ers. Okay, elsewhere around the NBA draft, of course, the Brandon Ingram went to the Lakers, and everybody's like, well, he's got to put on 30 pounds. Without 30 pounds, he's not going to make it in the National Basketball Association. Great talent, lots of potential. Love how he shoots. Love his game. He's a modern day NBA basketball player, meaning, and whenever you hear this term modern day, basically all that means is that he can shoot threes. Yeah, he's 6'7" or taller, and he can shoot threes. That is the very definition of a modern day NBA player. So a fantastic pick there. I'm going to get back to the Celtics a little bit later, but seriously, Jaylen Brown, number 3, Boston, seriously? More on that a little later in the day. One of the teams that had the best draft, I think, in my opinion, was the Phoenix Suns. They had a ton of holes to fill, and they filled many of those holes. Number 4 was Dragon Bender, and it was my favorite. I was texting one of my kids that Dragon had just been drafted number 4 to the Phoenix Suns. And of course, they went out and they got Marquise Chris as well a little later in the draft, and a fantastic guard. So they are looking good in Phoenix. At least some good moves for a team that needed it. My Minnesota Timberwolves. The howling has begun in Minnesota. Chris Dunn was picked. Loved the pick. There's a couple other point guards that I think were equally as talented as Chris Dunn in this year's draft, but very excited to have Chris Dunn on my Minnesota Timberwolves. Look, at the end of the day, I was torn between Chris Dunn and Buddy Hield. I love Buddy Hield's game. 25 points per game in college. He is heading to your New Orleans Pelicans. And if you haven't noticed, the Pelicans, they can't decide what they want their logo to look like. So all sorts of different versions of the Pelicans logo. The logo version that the folks at ESPN were using last night, though, was fabulous. So I hope the Pelicans will stick with that. Look, Buddy is not going to... I don't want to kid anybody here. He's not going to score 25 points a game in the NBA in his rookie season. Look, if he scores anywhere between 15 and 18 points a game in his rookie season, and trust me, on this Pelicans team, he's going to have a lot of chances to do that. So I'd expect him to be between 15 and actually 20 points a game if he stays healthy this year. All right, so we had a couple trades go down last night. And, of course, the big trade that went down was Serge Ibaka for Oladipo. And so the question, and if you watched any of the sports shows last night or any of the shows this morning or listened to any of the sports radio shenanigans that were going on, everybody's trying to figure out who got the best of this deal. And for me, the deal here would have been if Oklahoma, if OKC could have kept, okay, now hear me out. If they could have kept Serge Ibaka and gotten Oladipo, then they'd have something. Then they'd have something to really encourage Kevin Durant to stay. Look, the way Serge Ibaka was used in OKC over the last year and a half is different than how he'll be used in Orlando. So for Orlando, a semi-good move. I'm not in love with it, but it's an organization that's constantly rebuilding. So maybe this is a piece that they'll be able to use. For OKC, they get a third weapon. Somebody that can score 15 to 20 points a game for you, and he's young. So for them, it's a good move as well. I've got to tell you, though, my favorite, and this is going to come as a surprise to a lot of you that follow the Dave Dabbah Big Show, but my favorite pickup of the night, and it happened a little later and it was in the second round of the draft. Actually, before I tell you who this is, so I'm there. I'm on the couch. I'm in round number 2. I have now been watching the draft, I don't know, for 2.5 hours, maybe longer. I don't know. I'm on the couch for this long, and my wife comes up to me, and she says, and I quote, "Who drafted LeBron James?" And I'm like, oh my gosh, he plays for the Cavs. He can't get drafted again, honey. Anyways, so my favorite pickup of the night, though, was Kay Felder. And this is one of these kids that, he's like 5'8". He might even be shorter than that. But wait till you see him play. Just a fireball. Absolutely love this pick. He got picked, and then he got traded to the Cleveland Cavaliers. A fantastic pickup for the Cavs. This is a guy that should encourage J.R. Smith to put his shirt back on. But this kid can score 25 points a night. Fantastic pick for the world champion Cleveland Cavaliers. And that's just painful to say, world champion Cleveland Cavaliers. Anyways, elsewhere around the wonderful world of the NBA draft last night, and I've just been waiting to rip on the Boston Celtics. I do not know what Danny Ainge was thinking. He went out and he got something that he didn't need, and he got himself a small forward with the number 3 pick in the NBA draft. Look, Jaylen Brown out of Cal here in the Silicon Valley. I've been watching this kid play for the last year. Love him. Think he's going to be a fine NBA player. Very cerebral, smart kid. Will do well in the NBA. Will do okay with the Boston Celtics. But just way too high of a pick for Jaylen Brown. Plus, you needed shooting. Like I said this on the show a couple days ago. Everybody, and in fact, even last night during the NBA coverage on ESPN, they were sitting there predicting that Chris Dunn, they were going to pick a point guard that they didn't need for the Boston Celtics. I'm sitting there, Buddy Hield. Why wouldn't you take Buddy Hield here? Trust me, Buddy is, I just said this, 15 to 20 points a night. That is what the Celtics needed. I don't understand this pick this high in the draft for the Celtics. The Celtics had a grand total of 8 picks to choose from. So basically, they have such a log of nice players that play for the team. They just don't have any great players, which is going to keep them around that 45 to 50 win total until they figure out how to move some of these pieces around. So they ended up trading a couple of the picks away, which I understand. They had to do that. That was a no-brainer. They were trying hard to secure the services of Jimmy Butler, which goes back to my point. They need a shooting guard. And they could have just taken Buddy Hield there and not dealt with all of this Jimmy Butler talk. That didn't happen. It was the news of the night. The trade that never happened was, and it still could happen, but I mean, just ridiculous. So they pick up some foreign players, and most of those foreign players, and they picked up 2 foreign players in the first round. So when you pick up a foreign player in the first round, at some point you've got to bring that player over to play for your team, but you can certainly have them stay in their foreign leagues if you'd like. So that's certainly an option for the Celtics there. And it was an absolute terrible draft for the Celtics last night. I'm telling you, just brutal. Everybody else, though, I think, all in all, most of the teams in the NBA did a really nice job. If you take a hard look, at least on paper, they all seem to improve themselves, except for the Celtics. All right, and my last NBA draft note of the night goes to our favorite tweet. Really, this is the tweet of the year. This is DeMarcus Cousins with regards to the first pick that the Sacramento Kings picked for the night. And this is his quote. This is what he said. He said, "Lord, give me the strength." And then it's got, then he's got like two hands praying in the emoji. DeMarcus Cousins with the tweet of the night. All right, North America, tell us what you think. info@seat77.com.
And now, North America, it's time to get down and dirty for some hard-hitting, concussion-causing coverage of the National Football League. The sport that Dave is so passionate about that he hasn't missed a single play of a Minnesota Viking game for the past 16 years. Presented by Seat77.com. And now, back to the Dave Dabbah Big Show.
Okay, North America, we are just 76 days away from the start of your National Football League season. So we're kicking off today's daily NFL coverage with a PED story. Now, look, I have to tell you, if the NFL did any kind of real drug testing, I'm not sure who would be playing come Sundays. That being said, the NFL has finally looked into the Al Jazeera report and will be interviewing the players mentioned in that report, which was released 24 months ago. Did you just see it now, Mr. Goodell? Anyways, the players to be interviewed, I guess they were so busy with Deflategate that they took their eye off this ball. Anyways, the players to be interviewed in this one include Julius Peppers, Clay Matthews, and James Harrison. Truly amazing story there. Clay Matthews came out today and said he'd be happy to, sit down and do an interview with the NFL. It will be interesting to see where this story goes. Look, they're not going to be able to find anything. Nobody's actually going to sit there and go, "Oh yeah, I did do some PEDs, but since you didn't test me, I just decided to keep playing." I mean, nobody's actually going to admit anything. This right here is a PR story put out by your National Football League about nothing. They'd rather rip on Tom Brady over Deflategate, and they'd rather go after their number one star in the NFL than take PEDs seriously in the NFL. Look, my stance on performance-enhancing drugs over the years has kind of shifted. It's gone from one direction to another. I've covered all 360 degrees of drug use or performance-enhancing drug use in the NFL. And, for a long time, I was like, just let everybody take whatever they want to take. It doesn't matter. I don't care, because it's entertainment. It's like if you go to the movies and you watch a movie and there's a movie star, like let's say Snoop Dogg's in a movie, just for a sec, and Snoop Dogg's in the movie and he's on weed. He's smoking 420. He's probably going to be a little more funny than he would be if he wasn't. So I'm okay with that because it's entertainment. Do we look at performance-enhancing drugs the same way in the NFL? So my stance, though, has actually changed on this because of the harmful risks that these drugs actually have, Lyle Alzado, on the long-term effects of these players. So I believe that drug testing in the NFL is necessary, if not only to protect the youth of America, but to protect these players from themselves, who certainly do need a little bit of protection. So that's my stance, my ongoing shifting stance on drug testing in the NFL. Look, back to weed. I don't think they should test for that. That's the least of their concerns, if you ask me. Okay, so we have our before we get into the Ben Affleck story, we've got our top 5 cities that are now the largest sports misery cities. These are the cities that have taken over for Cleveland. the cities that have gone the longest and have been in the most pain since they won or never won a championship. And I'm just going to rattle these off for you. We have San Diego, Buffalo, Minnesota. This just pains me, but Minnesota, Minneapolis is certainly on the list. Washington, D.C., but that could change this year with the Nationals. And Vancouver. Those are your top 5 cities that are suffering because they have not won a championship or ever won a championship. Vancouver's never won a championship in anything. And it's been since 1991 that we've been able to say, hail to the Redskins. The Minnesota Twins won in 91. That was the last time anybody has won a championship in Minnesota. Though, I will say, that's not entirely true. My Minnesota Lynx of the WNBA, who, by the way, are 13-0. That's right. I just rattled off a WNBA record for you. But listen, seriously, the San Diego Chargers and the San Diego Padres not winning anything, it's just so difficult to be a fan of those two teams if you live in San Diego year in and year out. It is just painful to watch. Anyways, let me know if I missed any cities in the sports index that you think belong in that index, and we'll read them on the air next week. Info at seat77.com on that one. Okay, so 2 quick stories. First of all, Bill Simmons had his debut show, Any Given Wednesday, on HBO. So I'm not sure, what fans of the Dave Dabbah Big Show think of Bill Simmons. I'm not sure what fans of sports think about Bill Simmons. But I will say this. You really got to kind of respect the guy. He's got a real unique method for bringing sports and just kind of general news coverage to the world. So I've always kind of thought, there was really a good place in the media for a guy like Bill Simmons, and it was something that didn't really exist. So, as we all know, ESPN, the mothership, had a nasty divorce with Bill Simmons, and Bill will always be bitter about that divorce. Trust me. But he had his big debut show last night. Charles Barkley was Charles Barkley. Fantastic interview. The show, you kind of got to give it an A for its first show. But then, towards the end of the show, it completely derails. And Ben Affleck, speaking of drugs, was it just me, or didn't Ben seem like he was on cough syrup? I mean, I felt like Ben was, had he been punched earlier in the day, he was slurring some of his words a little bit. But anyway, so Ben Affleck on the show, and he just goes off on the National Football League related to Deflategate. It was one of the most fantastic derailing interview rants I have ever witnessed on television. So, a lot of the coverage earlier today kind of came out about the show, and people were kind of giving their opinions on how Bill Simmons did. And there's all this coverage about how Ben Affleck ruined the debut of the Bill Simmons show. And you people who have said that are completely wrong. Wrong? Why are you wrong? Because I'm talking about it right now. There's news coverage of it. Bill Simmons is doing what Bill Simmons does. He is good at making news out of old news and current news. He's just good at making news. And Ben Affleck was the perfect last guest on that show. I mean, the Deflategate rant was fabulous. Make sure you check it out. And for all of you people that are out there ripping on the way Bill Simmons conducted the interview or conducted the show, just give it some time. Trust me, just give it some time. Plus, trust me, this was perfect. That's exactly what Bill Simmons wants. He wants a lot of people talking about the show, and that's what HBO, quite frankly, has paid for. Okay, and final story of the day, and occasionally, and I do say this, occasionally we do get a little political on this show. Now, of course, being in the Silicon Valley, being originally from the great state of Minnesota, and then growing up in Orange County, you might be confused as to what my political beliefs would be. I mean, I grew up in the Orange Curtain, so you might think I'm fairly conservative. Though I am from the state that decided to run Walter Mondale for president. So, you might not be sure where I really fall in the spectrum of politics. And I like to kind of fall in the middle if I can, but certainly lean a little further left normally. I don't have a problem voting for Republicans if they're putting out the right kind of Republicans to vote for. That being said, you all know my views on Donald Trump. And I've said, anybody that actually seriously goes out and votes for Donald Trump is crazy. You do not understand what you're doing. It is a bad thing. So anyway, so Donald Trump shows up in Scotland because he's got a new golf course that they are opening there. And so here's a quote: "Just arrived in Scotland. Place is going wild over the vote." Okay, so the vote is the Brexit vote. And the Brexit vote, for those of you that haven't followed this at all, is this is the British government deciding to pull out of the EU, which of course won't happen overnight. And so then he goes on to say in his Twitter quote, "They took their country back, just like we will take America back. No games." Look, this is ridiculous. This whole Brexit vote was solely based on a topic that doesn't really exist, and that is immigration. They, the team that got together and wanted to get the British government out of the EU decided to use immigration as the catalyst to do it. They were saying all of these people are immigrating from other EU countries into Britain, and we want to stop it. We want to essentially put up a border. I mean, you would think the water that surrounds the island that is Great Britain would be enough. But that being said, that's really what this was all about. It had nothing to do with the economy. It had nothing to do with the economics of the country. I don't care what anybody says. This was a pure vote based on essentially hatred towards immigrants. Furthermore, the majority of the people that immigrate into Great Britain today do not come, and I repeat, do not come from other European countries. This was a complete and utter sham. And 6 months from now, when the British economy hasn't recovered, you guys are going to look back on yesterday and today and realize you made an huge, unfathomable mistake. So a little early in the day, the British Prime Minister came out and decided to resign, over this whole thing. The British economy crashed. The pound lost almost 20% of its value overnight. The U.S. economy took a pretty big hit as well, though we will, I think, be fine here. But the rest of the world has started to crash. This is the biggest crash that we've had economically since 2011. Now, look, I don't have a problem with a country deciding that it wants to make some changes. Just make those changes for the right reason and understand what the ramifications will be. This right here might have just put Europe over the brink. Okay. North America, thank you for all of your support on the Big Dave Dabbah Big Show. We'll be back for more shows next week for the Dave Dabbah Big Show. I am Dave Dabbah, reminding you that not everyone can be a champion, Ron Rivera, but everyone can act like one can. And good luck, North America.